Okay, so we are through the last of the Bond films in the Bond 50 set. When we last left off, we finished off with Timothy Dalton's License to Kill, and after that they had some legal issues which held them back from doing another Bond film for quite a few years. License to Kill was 1989, and the first movie we're going to talk about today didn't come till 1995. So it's a big layoff for Bond, probably the biggest in the history of the franchise, and came back with Pierce Brosnan taking the job that he almost had at the beginning of the Timothy Dalton run. Now, I don't mind Pierce Brosnan as Bond. I think he does quite a good job. He's quite charming. I liked him on Remington Steele. I think he's a pretty good Bond, but his films are just not very good. He's been placed in some pretty poor vehicles. Goldeneye was an okay start. I remember seeing it at the movies. It was an okay starting film for him. It lacked a few sort of classic Bond atmospherics, but it was an okay start, had enough action, introduced Pierce Brosnan, spawned a big game that was very popular, got Pierce Brosnan as a sort of internationally accepted as the new Bond. It sort of did its job. It wasn't spectacular opening for Brosnan. Now the Blu-ray of this has had a lot of criticism for its excessive DNR. I didn't actually think the noise reduction was that bad. You know, it obviously could have looked better. There was a bit of detail missing, but no one looked waxy. It was a fairly strong looking print, colour-wise and cleanliness-wise. You know, obviously it could have looked better, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people are crying. It probably just seems worse in comparison to the marvellous prints many of the other Bond films have had. 2 years later, Brosnan returns with Tomorrow Never Dies, which for some reason just doesn't really work. It has all the elements there. Brosnan is good, has lots of action, the music, the set pieces, but the whole thing just feels very dull. I don't know what it is. I just can't get into this film. I remember seeing it at the movies, and it was actually the last Brosnan Bond film I saw at the movies. After Tomorrow Never Dies, I just swore off going to see the Brosnan Bond films. As I say, it's not bad. It has all the elements. It's just something doesn't click, doesn't work. I think the one element they didn't have was a really strong villain. It was a very nerdy kind of villain. It wasn't menacing, and yeah, and that part of it just really didn't work. The transfer itself is passable enough. I think it could have been better for a film that new. It just feels very bland. I didn't really feel a lot of depth when I was watching it. Just kind of, maybe it was just the way it was shot, but it just feels very dull. And not an exciting transfer, but certainly not a bad transfer. The World Is Not Enough came up 2 years after that, and this film gets a lot of stick, and deservedly so. It's a bad Bond film. It's probably got a lot of worse elements than Tomorrow Never Dies, but I found it to be more fun when it was in the good patches. I think the problem with Brosnan is he plays Bond very serious, but the films he's in are more goofy Roger Moore-esque. So there's a real weird juxtaposition between the way he's playing it and the films he's in and the world his Bond inhabits. This World Is Not Enough is a good example of that. So it's definitely a lesser Bond film. The transfer is okay. You know, it's a solid transfer. It's a fairly new film. But really, none of these Brosnan films are really shining on Blu-ray the way you might have thought of films that are more recent in the set. They don't look anywhere near as good as some of the classic Bonds of yesteryear. Now, I think 4 years after that, we had Brosnan's final entry, Die Another Day, pretty much universally accepted as the worst Bond film in the whole franchise, and deservedly so. Funnily enough, the first 30-35 minutes are actually quite excellent, probably the best Brosnan stuff on his whole run. It's pretty dark, pretty serious, and then it just slowly starts unraveling into some of the most ridiculous stuff that you can even imagine. It's unbelievable what they tried to force into this film. It's just shaking your head material. I first saw this Bond film on television because I had no real interest in it, and I just turned it off halfway through, and it took me years till I actually got the DVD set that I sold to buy this Blu-ray set. When I got the DVD set, was the first I'd seen every Bond film multiple times, but Die Another Day I finally saw the last half of it, and it's even worse than the first half. So, and the special effects, I should say, are just terrible. Some of the worst in the whole series. They really stand out like a sore thumb. Maybe more so on Blu-ray, I guess. The transfer itself is pretty mediocre. Just seems like hasn't been giving any special attention. It just seems like a catalog title type of Blu-ray release without too much special love. Now, then there was a gap. There was some negotiation between Brosnan and the people at Eon, which at one stage there was talks of Quentin Tarantino had approached them with an idea to do a back-to-basics Bond using the first book, Casino Royale, which had only been used as a parody film in the 70s, to use it as the basis for a new Bond film. Those talks broke down. He wanted to use Brosnan. Brosnan then ended up being brought back as Bond. Enter Daniel Craig with Casino Royale, with no Tarantino involved, obviously. And they brought back Martin Campbell, who did Goldeneye, and he did a far better job. Not that he did a bad job in Goldeneye, but Casino Royale is an amazing film. Just watching it again this week, it's really just one of the great Bond films. Could be arguably the best Bond film. We'll see where it ends up on my final rankings. And it looks stunning on Blu-ray. Now, Casino Royale is the first one to get away from the sort of ultimate Bond DVD edition menus. It has its own menu, different from the menus from all the other pictures. But yeah, serious Bond film with a seriously done, with a great lead, great new Bond, and great action. And it doesn't feel like it's going to age badly like the Brosnan ones, which are not so old but just feel terribly aged already. These ones feel like kind of like the Connery ones, where they will last a lifetime. That was a huge success. A few years later, they come back with Quantum of Solace, and it feels a little bit rushed. A lot of people didn't like it. I didn't like it so much at the theatre. The action seemed to be shot a little too shaky cam, like Bourne films, and it seemed I think it's the first time in Bond history where it was really a sequel to the film before. It kind of just carried on with the story they started in the first one. Watching it a couple of times since, I like it more and more each time, and it's actually really an enjoyable Bond film, and I think it gets unfairly maligned. I think it's one that takes a few watches to appreciate. I think people were just expecting something different after the epic Casino Royale. So that was all the films in the set. The last disc that I checked out was the special bonus disc that comes with the Bond 50 set, and it's an okay little extra. The best extra out of the bunch was you get to watch all of the opening sequences. Bond is known for these elaborate credit opening sequences for all the films, which are really stunning. You can watch them without the printed credits, so you can just watch the sequences without any credits covering them up for each film, which is pretty cool. I believe those were on the Ultimate DVD, but on each film. This one is just an index of all the films, opening sequences. You just go through and pick which one. There's featurettes on every part of Bond, compiling interviews and stuff. Doesn't seem to be anything too fresh. A lot of stuff's just being compiled, and but they're okay to watch. But it's not a deal breaker that you must have this bonus disc. And it has some blogs for Skyfall, the new Bond film coming out, which I just didn't. I had a quick look, but I didn't want to look too much because I don't want to see anything before Skyfall comes out here tomorrow. So I should be seeing that within the week. And in the next video, I'll have a final roundup of the Bond 50 set. I'll have the Skyfall review and the final Bond rankings. Once I've seen Skyfall, I'll have the Bond rankings of where I have the Bond films ranked. So we'll see you next time.